Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It is an interesting night for the guys here at the Drive Pink Dialogue. I will just explain that in a second. But first, I start with this. Saur, my friend, my co host, how are you doing on this fine Monday early evening?
After that 4-0 loss to PSG, I had to recalibrate my brain. And I didn't know how I'd feel afterwards. Yesterday, I think it was mixed emotions for having played a really good Club World Cup, but then losing the way we did to PSG. And I was worried that waking up the next day, I'd be a little bit down and out. And I wasn't particularly looking forward to this episode yesterday evening. But then things fell into perspective. And this morning, I woke up happy about the way Inter Miami's actually performed and the general perspective on our performance, the general perspective in this tournament is largely positive. And I think I'm going to take away that specific feeling and that emotion. I genuinely had the most fun watching Inter Miami play, talking about these games, dissecting and analyzing these games with you over the last 2 weeks. And regardless of how it ended, I don't think that's going to change. So I'm feeling happy, man. How are you feeling?
I feel fine about it. I think this is going to be very interesting. Let me explain what's happening tonight, and then I think that will explain how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to be doing two episodes back to back tonight. One will be half an hour, one will be an hour. And it is both my fault and Source fault. It is my fault because I have OCD. And does it affect me in many ways? No, really doesn't. But sometimes it rears its little head. And in this situation, it has reared its head where we are going to be doing a half an hour game recap of the PSG game. And basically, that means we're going to be doing awards. I feel like it's important that we maintain our awards so that we can look back on posterity and have a set of awards for every single game that Inter Miami has played. And then for the second hour, we're going to end the stream. We're going to start a new episode and we're going to talk about how Inter Miami turns the page from here. And that will serve as our midweek episode for this week. And that's Sour's fault because he's going out of town and abandoning us for a little rest and recovery and a little relaxation too. So maybe it's not R&R, but triple R is there. So I feel very good about what Inter Miami did in the Club World Cup. And I am enthusiastic and ready to talk about some of the really impressive performances from this tournament over the course of the next 27 minutes. I feel much less enthusiastic about what this team has got going for it moving forward. And that I think will be reflected in the second hour. So if you are looking for something optimistic, this is the episode for you. If you're looking for something more pessimistic and you really want to, drown in the shame of a 4-0 loss to the world champions, the second hour is probably for you. Did I break that down relatively well?
Listen, we've been doing this long enough, and I've been friends with you way too long to question some of your decision making. So I'm just going to roll with the punches here, and I agree. I think you've described it in a very concrete way. 2 episodes today, largely my fault. I apologize, but I think everyone needs a rest and recuperation after what has been a roller coaster of 3 weeks. But this episode is going to be largely positive. Next episode is, I think, not negative, but more forward looking. And whatever that looks like, you can join us for that episode and find out. But yeah, we're here. Let's get straight into awards.
Well, before we do, I also want to mention one last thing, and that is to accept blame and to apologize for the Inter Miami fan base. For the first three games of the Club World Cup, you and I put out a video explaining how to win the game if you're Inter Miami. And it was a preview video. We did it 2 days before. And then we didn't do it for the PSG game. The reason that happened is because it actually took a lot of extra work behind the scenes in terms of video editing that neither of us are particularly good or comfortable doing. And so after the first one, we realized this wasn't really sustainable, but it got such great feedback and I think we made such a impact on the Al Ali community that it made the rest of everything else we did so much more fun. And so we decided to do it again for Porto and Palmeiras. Didn't have the same sort of impact, and it didn't bring in fans of the other team that made the experience more fun for us. So once that happened, it wasn't going to be something we were going to continue to do. But then it turns out that maybe Javier Mascherano and Lionel Messi were watching our videos and learning how to beat the opposition, and that they really missed that guidance this week against PSG. Kidding aside, that's really all I have to say. I think the game itself, just from a big picture perspective, it's not about the tactics. It's not about this or it's just about the emotion and the tournament as a whole, and which players were ready for the biggest stage and which players weren't. And maybe we'll get into that in awards. But I think most of those types of conversations we had yesterday, which is why I feel very comfortable just going straight to awards here.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to play PSG anytime soon again, so there's no reason for us to dissect them and their play style. Everyone's seen enough of them, and I think we can put them behind us. But overall, I thought that was a very positive experience, regardless of the scoreline. And Inter Miami played well in the second half, whether you want to label that as PSG taking the foot off the gas or Inter Miami being better. I think there was some positives to take away, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it during the awards itself.
Okay, let's just get right into it. You had man of the match first last time, so I will go first this time. And I'm going to go with a little bit of surprising pick because I think it was clear Messi was the best player, but I wanted to branch out for a specific reason, and I'm giving it to Telasco Segovia. Messi was the best player, but I don't think there was any surprise that he was able to compete against PSG. It was Segovia was the one player on our team that I thought really stepped up in a way that we weren't sure was going to happen. And so for me, I'm giving him the man of the match instead of Messi because I do feel like his performance, not just in this game, but throughout this tournament, was so impressive. He went up against some incredible teams from all over the world, and he absolutely stood up. I think if we had 7 players at the preparedness level of Segovia yesterday, it may have been a much different game. And I thought just holding on to the ball under immense pressure was something Busquets and Jordi Alba and Suárez weren't able to do. Like I thought he was exceptionally impressive. I think he had one pass into the box that hit Allende, that Allende put on target. It was sort of right at the keeper. So I thought Segovia was not just really impressive in this game, but in this tournament. And I don't think he's long for Inter Miami. If I'm being totally honest, I thought he was really good.
If we actually
under the
do
circumstances.
Under the circumstances, yes. If we actually do a Club World Cup award show where we sort of give away awards to the players and their overall performance across the 4 games, I think Segovia is going to be the standout player and the breakthrough player for Inter Miami because he's proven a couple of things and almost reinforced the idea that we had of him when we first signed him. I think he's a phenomenal player when he's receiving the ball. Yesterday, the reason he stood out for me, the reason I thought he was a lot more positive compared to some of his other peers, and I'm comparing the youngsters right now, is because Segovia has this innate tendency to ask for the ball. He takes initiative. He wants the ball at his feet and then wants to allow the rest of the players around him to play. He likes to distribute, play 1-2s. We saw that in the first half of the season when we played him in the middle a couple of times. We've seen that a lot more over the last 4 games. And I think he has grown from game to game, taking initiative in the middle of the park, making sure he's the one who's getting on the ball, absorbing the pressure, allowing people from the opposition midfield to press him, and then just being press resistant, releasing the ball in the right areas. Yesterday as well, it looked like he was ready for the occasion, or at least not perturbed or scared of the occasion. He knew the challenge in front of him, and yes, may not have been phenomenal compared to Vitinha or Fabian Ruiz or the other players on the PSG pitch, João Neves, who scored 2. I still think he didn't feel out of place. And that for me is one of the biggest compliments you can give him. I think he's been a breakout star for us this Club World Cup. And for me, Javier Mascherano has to play him in the middle. If we go back to the MLS in that next game that Segovia starts and he's back on that left wing spot, I think we would have gone back 1 step forward and 50 steps back.
He's to me, the one player that stock really grew in this tournament. I mean, I know Tadeo Allende had some nice moments, and Ustari had some nice moments, and Falcone had some nice moments. But like for me, it's Segovia's the one player whose stock really rose. And I think as a young player, I've been willing to give him a, a break
Leeway.
for being
Yep.
inconsistent. But now that we've seen him consistently perform against the best teams in the world, I'm expecting consistency from him as long as he's putting the right space on the field, and I expect him to be. So Segovia gets my man of the match. What is your, I guess not your first award. What is the Heron that flew north?
So the Heron that flew north award goes to the player that's doing the wrong thing on the pitch. For me, it pains my heart to give this away, but I thought Sergio Busquets was quite poor when it came to playing in that midfield. It felt like the game was passing him by. He obviously had that one error where he got pressed, gave the ball away. You mentioned that in another game he could have probably got a foul there. I thought that was a completely clean
Oh yeah,
breakaway on him.
I agree.
There was no chance of getting a foul there, even in the MLS. Um, he just felt like he was two paces off compared to PSG, who was playing on an accelerator and they were just so quick, almost felt reminiscent of Al Ali. And which, this tells me that Sergio Busquets against teams that are very quick and pacey, not just in terms of their running, but in terms of how they pass, I think may have been slightly outshone and, yeah, didn't particularly play well. Caused that second goal for Inter Miami, which basically killed the game, and was to blame for a lot of plays that PSG was making through the middle of the park. I think the way I thought about it was it felt like the game was just passing him by, and he was a passerby, a passenger in the middle of the park. So, for me, Sergio Busquets, Heron of the match, Heron that flew north. Sorry.
Yeah, especially because it was his turnover at the top of the box that
Yeah.
killed the game off. I think Inter Miami was starting to grow into the game a little bit. Um, from minute 20 to minute 38 or whenever that happened. Obviously, PSG was going to dominate this game, but I think if you can get into the half 1-0 and you can sort of have a halftime speech and you kind of get this bounce back that you had the one early bad moment, but you survived and now you're only down one goal. Maybe you can make something happen. Um, it was his turnover. And you're right. Like, I don't think it was a foul, but I do think he gets that called a lot in the MLS, whether it's a foul or not. and I'm sure opposing fans hate it, but um, he gets called for a foul there a lot. And he didn't in this game. And that press was intense. And you're right. He wasn't ready for it. And listen, there's no shame in Sergio Busquets at 37 or whatever he is, not being ready to face the best team in the world. He's not there anymore. And that's okay.
And I
He's
want to
never gonna he's
preface
never gonna
this.
face this type of team again.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. We're not going to play PSG every single game. So there are going to be detractors who are going to say Sergio Busquets needs to retire. He's no longer capable of playing at this level. In the MLS, he's still one of the best midfielders there is. Of course, we're not going to be playing PSG every single game. I do think there's a case to be made that we now need to start thinking about the succession plan for Sergio Busquets. We don't know if he's going to actually play next season or not. But even in the MLS, I would still start him every single game he's available because he can still perform at that level and be the best there. So I'm not too worried about him in the MLS.
Yeah, and I'll remind you, he was the guy that unlocked everything for Inter Miami against Palmeiras. So
Yeah.
like it was a bad game from him against an incredible team, but that's okay. Okay, my first award is the where did I put it? The Pride Among the Lions Award.
The Pride Among the Lions Award. It's obviously to a player that you really love, and a player who was able to showcase that he's made for this occasion. And that goes to Noah Allen, even though he only played 10 minutes of this game and got injured afterwards.
By the way, I want to
Yeah.
mention. I have been waiting to get the new pink kit and the new blue kit until I could figure out which player I wanted to get on the back of it because I wanted to get a player I haven't gotten before, and I finally decided to get it Telasco Segovia. So pulled the trigger on that one, waiting for that kit to
Nice.
come in. No, this award, the Pride Among the Lions award, goes to Lionel Messi. He's world class. He's still world class. There's no question about it. Um, even against Palmeiras, against Porto, against Alali in that second half, he was the best player on the field. He was the best player in that group. And I think if you put him on PSG, he would still run that team just like, he would have if he was 5 years younger. He was so impressive in this tournament. And I don't think the fact that they lost 4-0 when he could barely get on the ball in the first half, like the press was so suffocating, and even Busquets and Alba weren't able to handle it, and certainly the rest of the midfielders in the back line, like they just couldn't handle it. They were never going to be able to get him in a position to do anything productive in this game. But I think from his perspective, he went into this Club World Cup as an underdog to even get out of the group. Maybe a lot of people thought he wasn't even going to get a single point. And I think really carried the team, especially from a leadership perspective throughout this into the knockout stages. And like, if there was a different opponent in the round of 16, we may be talking about a quarterfinal run. It just happened that you run into the best team in the world. And so I think he should, hang his head up high. I'm sure he will. There's absolutely no shame for his perspective. I thought his performances, even in this game, even in the second half, the sprinting, the trying to create something happen, trying to get a goal on the board. He did some defensive work yesterday, even when the game was out of reach, that I wanted to applaud him for. So that is a team full of jungle cats on PSG, including a bunch of lions. And I think Lionel Messi should be proud that he was, able to be in that still at this level, and they earned the right to be on that field.
He could play on that PSG team and still be the biggest game changer. So the way he played yesterday, I don't think was any different to how he's performed this entire tournament. Absolutely phenomenal through and through. I actually had an award for him that was dedicated to you, and I called it the Coach Herb Award because he actually made us dream a miracle. And Inter Miami had an absolute miracle run in this tournament, all thanks to Lionel Messi. So completely agree with everything you just said, and he's going to be remembered as one of the best to ever do it for Inter Miami as well. I don't think we're ever going to relive some of these experiences if it wasn't for Lionel Messi.
Never.
So
Never.
absolutely deserved award.
Okay, what is your next award? Our first award.
I am going to go for the Tuneless Fiddle Award.
The Tuneless Fiddle. This sounds like a negative award.
It is.
So I'm going to give it to Maxi Falcone, because when he is strung right, he can play a beautiful tune. But in this moment, he wasn't strung right, and it was out of tune, and it didn't look great.
I think you've got
next
the right. I think you've got the right idea, but this is. I have two meanings for this. So fiddle. If you go to the phrase second fiddle, there's a player who played second fiddle this tournament for large parts, and that was Toto Avilés. And although he can sound quite tuneful at times, yesterday he was quite tuneless. And we talked about a player's stock going up this tournament in Telasco Segovia. One player whose stock I think may have actually dropped is Toto Avilés, because the first 30 seconds he comes on, he puts in a tackle, gets a yellow card. If we get into the next round, he's obviously not going to play. That's fine. But I think he wasn't particularly great in this game. He wasn't particularly great this tournament. And I feel like we're coming to a point where we see players like Ian Frey, Noah Allen, Yannick Bright, now Telasco Segovia really stepping up and performing for this team. And yet Toto's still that player that we know has the potential, but hasn't necessarily stepped up to his potential. And I think when he came on into Miami's defense struggled, obviously, because we were drilled to play with Noah Allen in that position, but he wasn't particularly great and had that unfortunate own goal that I don't particularly blame him for. But he wasn't great yesterday, and I don't think he's been good this tournament either. So worrying signs, but hopefully once he's back in the MLS, he can get back into the rhythm.
I thought he was really, really good against Palmeiras. Played 90 minutes against Palmeiras, and I thought he was good when he had to come off the bench against Porto in that second half. Wasn't good yesterday, but I don't think he was one of many that wasn't good. So I'll just leave it at that. Like I think it's fine to criticize his performance yesterday, but I don't think it was any worse or better than 6 other guys on the team. So um, I think his performance. I don't think, in my opinion, his stock hasn't changed from this tournament, and I guess I'll leave it at that. Okay, my last award is the Show Must Go On award.
The Show Must Go On award goes to, and I think you've given this award before. I think that goes to Jordi Alba, because despite his performance yesterday, the show is going to go on, and he's going to be a star of the show.
I'm giving it to Federico Redondo because another player whose stock may have gone up. I'm not convinced that this changes much for him as we get back into the regular season. I think we were very pro Redondo and his ability to hold on to the ball and keep possession in this tournament. But now that we're going to be moving into MLS play, I think we need him to be more. We need a more expansive midfielder in that, and a more box-to-box midfielder in that role next to Busquets, or someone who's going to be behind Busquets that can allow Busquets to get forward. But I nevertheless thought he had a really good tournament. Obviously, against Palmeiras, he leaves in the 77th minute, and I thought him leaving the game with cramps is the reason we lost the game. So I thought he had a great tournament, but can he translate this into higher quality play in the MLS? I think that's the big thing for him. So this was a show that he put on, and I was very impressed with him. But now the show must continue on. So I want to see it from Redondo moving forward, but I thought this was really a fun, good tournament. And by the way, Brad says the same thing, that Redondo deserves a shout because I thought he was really impactful in this tournament.
No, absolutely. I thought he had really positive performances all around. I don't know if his stock changes or not, but one thing I will say is Redondo proved that if he plays against a certain style of opponent where we are required to do a certain thing, certain tactic that we need to play, he can be really, really good. I think it served him well playing against teams that are not used to playing physical. And when we are not going to be constantly bombarded in the middle of the pitch, where the pressure is going to be less, he will be a lot more effective. And that could actually work really well in certain European teams. And I won't be surprised if he gets a call sooner rather than later. I do think going back into the MLS, not sure how he's going to be translated on the pitch there and how he's going to be used. But I agree. I thought he had a really good performance in that last game. He's been playing well this tournament. He's been asked to do a job in the absence of Yannick Bright, and he's stepped up. So you can't deny that for sure. He's shown that he's a specific system player and he's a role player. And on a team that asks him to do a role, he can really pull it off.
And I think that is a role that could start almost every game in certain leagues too. So I think he went a long way to helping Inter Miami recoup their money for him if he does get a move to Italy or Spain or something like that. Because I thought he did handle himself pretty well in this tournament. Okay, what is your second and final award of the Club World Cup?
The last award that I'm going to give out is the Empty Aquarium Award. Now, this is slightly negative, but also positive.
The Empty Aquarium Award is going to go to the things running through my brain about this are probably not what you're thinking, and also probably not appropriate. So I'm going to guess Oscar Ustari because he had a solid tournament.
So the Empty Aquarium Award means that the fish is out of water. And specifically yesterday, I think one player who was like a fish out of water was Cello Wiegand. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I thought he was generally very good this tournament. Again, like a lot of the players that we've talked about. And my opinion of Cello Wiegand has honestly gone up since the start of the season. There was a time when I would complain about him starting a game. I do feel he is definitely a team player and does something for this back line that when we need him to do a certain role, he performs it the same way as Redondo. Of course, our preference and bias for Ian Frey always stands true, but I think he's been great this tournament. Yesterday was one level too high for him. Uh, he got absolutely rinsed by Quara. He got absolutely taken to the cleaners by Desiree Doué. And he wasn't the only one in the back line, absolutely not. But I think he's a representation of a few of the players where you know in the MLS they're going to be really good players, but this was a level too high for them, and that's okay. It just goes to show that Inter Miami can step up to a level further, and I'm not saying anything in terms of replacing Wiegand or Redondo or Falcone, but I think this was a level too high for them. And I'm glad they got the experience, but yesterday they got found out a little bit, and Chelo Wiegand was one of those players.
There's no shame in not being able to guard
No,
Ivica
none.
Kvaratskhelia. So I thought he was good in this tournament. But he wasn't ready for yesterday. That's okay. So yeah, that's all I have to say about it. You're right. He was earlier in this tournament. I have a lot of positive things to say and appreciation for what he did in the group stage. So in this game, I don't need to rehash anything else. Okay, any other players, and let's run through this in maybe 2 minutes, that you wanted to stop on? I had an award for Maxi Falcone about consistency. All of the greatness we saw from him over 2.5 games in that group stage disappeared yesterday. So does he have a consistency problem where he can step up in the big moments? Sometimes, I don't know. Like, I think that's a conversation we can have when we get to the MLS conversation in the next episode. Busquets, we talked about. Suárez, I think is similar, where like he stepped up, I thought, in this tournament, but wasn't ready for yesterday. But maybe would have been if the rest of the team was ready.
I will say he's nowhere near his levels from last season, and that can be a worrying sign. But when
I
it
will say
comes to
that
just this
Palmeiras goal was
tournament,
the best one we've ever
yeah,
seen from him, though.
but still, I think that was one off. And I don't want to be negative about Suarez. I thought he had a generally positive tournament. So
No, Allen, I thought really held himself well, and maybe this game goes slightly differently if he doesn't leave the game in the 19th minute. Benjamin Kramaski, I thought also, especially in that second game against Porto where he gets to start, I thought he was phenomenal. To me, I think he's better as a starting player than off the bench. I know he feels like his tool set works really well off the bench, but it just doesn't ever seem to, in my opinion. And then, Fafa Picault came off the bench, but we didn't really see a lot of depth from this team. And then we'd be going back to Ian Frey and guys like that played early in this tournament. So I think that's everybody. Jordi Alba also wasn't ready yesterday. And maybe that's because he hasn't played a ton of soccer. Maybe that's because he's not quite ready to compete against the best team in the world, but similar to Busquets.
Inter Miami needed to be 100% in this game against PSG, and we fell short, and that's okay. There's absolutely no shame in losing to the best team in the world the way we did as well. And there's levels to this game at times, and even the commentator said it, that this is another higher level for Inter Miami to play against. I think it'll be a great experience for all these players, including some of our older veteran players as well. I'm sure they're not used to losing to such big European teams in this manner, but it's an experience, it's a lesson, and I think it has been a fantastic journey, one that we can be proud of up until the very end. And I hope all Inter Miami fans take that away instead of just a loss in the in the round of 16. So for me, it's going to be a very positive memory from this entire tournament. And I'm glad that Inter Miami got to be a part of it and got to be an integral part of it. And we made history. So it's always going to be in the history books.
Sean says the worst part of yesterday is that we could have done something to let the kids play. I understand why yesterday he didn't, but I do think it's a little sad that we didn't get a chance to see Yannick Bright in this tournament, that we didn't get a chance to see David Ruiz in this tournament, that Frey's tournament got cut short. Not because I think it would have changed the outcome in a particularly strong way of what Inter Miami ended up doing, but I just would have loved to see those guys compete against some of the best players in the world. I can understand why Santi Morales might not be ready for that. But yeah. Saur, the last question. I have two extra questions actually. One, how did you feel about the graphics for the Dry Pink Dialogue? The gold and white. The Club World Cup did not have a ton of logos or iconography that we could play off of with our graphics design. So white and gold sort of ended up being what we landed on. How did you feel about white and gold now that we're going to see it for the last time for a long time?
I want to applaud the graphics department because I think they did a fantastic job throughout this tournament, not just with this, but also with the production quality and some of the preview games that we put together. It was something we haven't attempted recently, and it was the first time we put out such videos. So I'm glad that we have such a competent production design team. And I think we should bring this back for the Leagues Cup.
The problem is we already got something for the Leagues Cup. Okay, here's what I will say. Here's my last question. And we wanted to keep this strictly under 30 minutes. We're now at 31, which is so us. Who do you think is going to win this tournament, Club World Cup?
Either PSG or Bayern. Whoever wins that game is going to win the Club World Cup.
I think it's going to be Manchester City, if I'm being honest. I think they might play PSG in the final, but I think it's going to be Man City. I think this tournament for those teams is going to be all about having the energy to make it through to the end. And the fact that they brought in like 8 players since January, I think is going to give them
they have a whole new team,
the legs and the depth to make that happen. Okay, guys, like I said, we're doing a double show tonight. So we're going to end this one here. And if you're listening on audio and you're very confused, I apologize. We're going to pick this up in the next minute or two with our sort of midweek episode. We're going to be turning the page, talking about Inter Miami and what they have to do moving forward. We will see you guys in a few minutes. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful